guys, Jo here with another tutorial using Time for Tea Designs, Digistamp, Reading Rosie and Ralph and Sleeping Simon, who's your bonus add-on when you purchase this Digistamp. So I'm just starting off with some colouring. I've printed my image out onto super smooth paper. This is a thickness of paper that will easily go through my printer, so it's about 120 GSM. I can't seem to get anything thicker through my printer, but this works perfectly well for my purpose. I'm just speeded up the colouring for you just so that you can see what I'm doing and the different colours that I'm using without it taking up too much time. Otherwise this video would be incredibly long. So I've listed all the Copic markers that I've used on the side there so that you can pause this, slow this down and follow it at your own leisure. So I'm just moving on now to starting on my background, which I've used again some super smooth cardstock, a little bit thicker this time. This is about 200 GSM paper, and I'm using my Zig clean colour brush markers to create a fun rainbow background. At the moment I don't have many of the real brush markers, or at this point I didn't. I've listed the colours that I used on screen, and all I've done is just wipe the marker on the back of an acrylic block and then used one of my water brushes to wet my paper a little bit initially, and then just apply the colour from the acrylic block directly onto my paper in stripes and let them mix together to create a nice rainbow effect. Where the colour hasn't been quite intense enough, I've just gone back over that with less diluted colour and then just use my water brush just to blend that in. This was a pure experiment. I've never used these brush markers before, so I was just playing, but I really enjoyed how it turned out. And because I was using my water brush pen rather than a paintbrush, I wasn't really putting a lot of water down on the paper, so that meant that it didn't pull or warp in any way, so that worked out really well. So I have since purchased more of the brush markers because I really love the way that they work. I've also coloured some images in using them, so I have purchased some more, and I will link to where I got those from, because I got a really good deal, a bargain that I found from another crafter that I watch on YouTube. Pointed it out to me, so I'll put that information in my blog. So I've now let that dry, cut that to size using a Heavy Doodle nested die, and I'm now just applying some splatters of white acrylic paint using an old paintbrush. I found that this technique works really well for me rather than just using the back of a paintbrush, because I like the size of splatter that it gives. I've then also, once that's dried off a little bit, using a water brush, a larger water brush, to apply some gold watercolour paint to add some more splatters to my background. And again, I will link to all of those products in the resulting blog post. So now I've got my background completed, I'm now thinking about sentiments. I've fussy cut out my image, so she's ready to go, and I've just popped those into my stamping platform just to see where I would like them all to be positioned. I've picked a sentiment from a stamp set. It's a Lawn Fawn stamp set, and it's just, I think it's the Love Letters set, and it was just the sending sentiment that I wanted to use along with the Hugs die cut that you see, but I'll come to that in a little while. I did try putting that directly onto my background, but I didn't like the way it came out. I think I pressed too hard and the sentiment smudged a little. It wasn't clear what it said, so I decided against that and decided to try some embossing onto black cardstock. Again, I've left this in the video, but again, this didn't really work for me. I think again I'd been a bit heavy-handed, pressed down a bit too hard, and the sentiment didn't come out very clear. So I do have a tendency to be a little bit heavy-handed. I am, you know, it's something that I need to work on. But I do like the way that the white embossing ink looks on the black background. So I persevered, tried to work on my heavy-handedness and give it another go, and this time it did come out much better, although there were a few little spots and speckles despite me using my anti-static powder tool beforehand. So I've just cleaned that up ever so slightly using my pokey tool and a very fine paintbrush just to get rid of those extra little speckles, and then I'm using my heat gun to set that, and I was really happy with how that came out in the end. So just cleaning all of that back up, and now I'm going to cut that sentiment out of my cardstock using a small die from the smallest die from the Heavy Doodle set. So that's the perfect size for this size of sentiment. So I'm just popping that into my snap cutting machine, which is on the right hand side off screen, and I'm moving on to my hugs sentiment. So this has come from a Mama Elephant die set. Again, I'll link to that in my resulting blog post, and I've cut several of these out of just plain white cardstock, and I'm going to layer these up. Now I've seen a couple of people do this in other tutorials, and I really like the effect of it once they're all stuck together. So it's a little bit fiddly and it's a little bit time consuming, but the resulting effect is great. It does create a really nice chunky sentiment that creates a good focal point on the front of your card. So I'm just sticking these together with a little bit of multimedia matte glue, and just layering those up using my tweezers to just help me position them, and then there's a little bit of filling around to line them up so that they all look like they are one piece, and you can't see the joins. So just tapping a few little dots all the way around and just lining those up. And just while I'm doing that, I will just explain that I am using new video editing software. It's been a bit of a pain trying to get it all set up, and this is new audio, so I'd be really interested to hear what you guys think to how this has turned out. Are there any issues with it? Can you hear the audio okay? Can you see the pictures clearly enough? And is there any thoughts that you've got on how it's turned out? So now I've got all my elements together, I am just now trying to work out whereabouts I'd like them to sit on my background, and I'm using some foam tape just to attach these and give a little bit of dimension to the front of my card. So using different sized squares to attach that. That's a little bit off camera, I apologise for that, but just while I take off the bits of tape and attach that, I haven't backed this onto any card to make it any more rigid, which I sometimes do with my digi stamps, just because I've had to print them on much thinner paper. Sometimes I like to put reinforce them a little bit with an extra bit of card, but I didn't feel that was necessary with this particular image, as it is quite a nice size. Attaching my sentiment on the top and realised that it wasn't straight, so repositioned that. And then the hugs sentiment, because that's already got some dimension, I'm just applying a few dots of the multimedia matte glue to the back of that, rather than adding any more dimension to it with any foam pads. So just dotting that all around. This does get a little bit messy, so using your tweezers to help you pick it up really helps, and then just popping that on the bottom of my card there. And then the final stage, once I've just made sure that there's no bits of glue leaking out, is to just attach this panel now to the front of my card. So I will be using some liquid glue to attach that, and you can see that these were some experiments with my Zig markers on the back of there, so don't waste any paper. And just attaching that to the front of my card there, and using a clean piece of cardstock just to help apply a bit of pressure and make sure that it's completely stuck down, and that I'm not getting any of my mucky fingers all over my nice card. and that's the card complete. So I really hope that you did enjoy the tutorial and that the new video editing has been okay for you. If you did like the video, it'd be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe, and hit that bell so that you're notified of any new videos. Thanks ever so much for watching today, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you. Bye bye now.